good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brad Stoller. Welcome to another educational webinar. This week we're going to talk about, it seems like nobody really wants to talk about this because it can be a little embarrassing, but you know what I'm talking about. Where you think you've had a sale, you tell everybody about it, and then you know what happens. Nothing happens. And then you get that walk of shame. At some point, somebody's going to ask you, hey, what happened? And so we're going to talk about that a little bit today. So the reason I brought this up is we've had a lot, I shouldn't say a lot of our clients, but we've had a few of our clients mention that, they love our appointments. They all talk about the quality and they like that part. And when we talk to them, a few months into the program, we ask, hey, what's going on with the closings? And every once in a while we'll have some customers that'll say, you know what, we've been on some good appointments. We feel the pipeline going. Haven't closed anything yet, so not to be alarmed, but then we'll go a few more months and they still haven't closed anything. And we're wondering what's going on here. And what we're finding out is we could dive in a little deeper, and they kind of say the same thing. They were kind of excited. They had some really good opportunities and a lot of enthusiasm. And sure enough, that those sales they thought they had, a lot of them just kind of fizzle away, and they never hear back from them again. Some of them, they close, but they seem like they're leaving a lot of business on the table, and they can't quite put their finger on it. It's like the prospects go dark on them. So if that's you, well, don't feel too bad about it, because it's pretty common, especially with even high-level sales professionals. The higher the level up they go, they tend to have this happen a lot less, but a lot of salespeople don't quite understand the signs of it. And it does hurt them. It hurts the sales organization they're with. And again, don't feel too bad about it. So what today is all about is let's take a dive and go a little deeper and really find out what's causing this. And then more importantly, what can you do about it? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So again, my name is Brad Stoller. I'm the National Director of Business Development with the PT Services Group. I see there's a lot of familiar names that are with us here today, so welcome to all of you that have endured one of my webinars before. Glad to always have you, and for those of you I haven't met yet, welcome aboard, and hopefully you'll get a lot out of this and want to come back for more. My role with the PT Services Group is really, it's kind of twofold. It is to, obviously, one of my jobs is to bring customers into our business so we can keep going. But what we found that it helps when we have the ability to help with the sales process, because the way we do business is we don't have long-term contracts. So the only reason people are going to stay around is if they get a return on their investment. Part of my job is to kind of help coach them on the sales process, and I'm pretty committed to this. As far as helping business owners improve that sales processes and they close more deals with less effort. That's really what I'm all about, and hopefully you'll feel I'm doing a good job of it here in about 30 minutes. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to cover what we refer to as the happy ear syndrome, and I'm going to go into more detail on all this a little bit later, but this is just an overview. What are wishy-washy terms to listen for and what to do when you hear them? Of course, we'll talk about what the wishy-washy terms are and what they mean. How you can hold your prospects accountable. Yeah, I did say that. Your prospects accountable, not the other way around. Why having all the decision makers involved is really critical. And pushing back with your prospects in a way that really does hold them accountable. And then, if you need some help, what do you do? Where do you go? So we're going to kind of cover those items today. So here's a real story. And this is not made up. This is true. But a couple years back, there was a sales professional that, he arrived at a new company after spending years as an entrepreneur, and he worked as a marketing consultant. He seemed like he had a lot of success. But when he came to the company, he felt like there was a lot of pressure. And a lot of that pressure he put on himself to really make sure that he performed and really knocked it out of the park. There's a lot of expectations upon this person. So, he started out okay. He had sales earlier than what the company expected, and and he seemed like he was, doing pretty well to start out with. And as he became more and more confident, sales kept coming more and more and more. And he kept a lot of activity, which is really important. And then it happened. He had the incredible month, the breakout month. And it just seemed like no matter who he talked to, they all, yeah, let's do it. So he wasn't really sure what the company record was for 1 month, but he was pretty sure that he just blew it away. It wasn't, he didn't even think it was going to be close. So everybody in the company is excited. He's excited. Everybody talked about his success. And he started to, get a little bit of a swelled head. You know how that goes. And then something strange happened. He sent out 10 contracts in a month, which is 2 to 3 times more what the typical month would be. But out of those 10 contracts that he sent out, only 3 of them came back. And well, no worries. I just follow up. Had a couple of people asking some questions. Hey, how about these contracts? When are they coming back? That kind of thing. A couple months later, there wasn't one more contract that came back. So instead of being the company record holder and all excited and everybody's putting him on that pedestal, what really happened is that he kind of got a little embarrassed about the whole issue. He felt a little shame. He had the look from the other people in the company as they walked by. I wouldn't say anything, but they just had the look. It just didn't make him feel very good. That company prepared for the onslaught of business, and it just never came. So that's a real story. So let's talk about the warning signs that happy year syndrome is about to happen. First of all, happy years, what that means is exactly what that story was. That person who thought he set the company record really had a bad case of what we refer to as happy years. And we're going to go into, what that is, but we'll come back to that story in a minute, and I'll finish up later. But here's some things that you might hear, and these are some hints that happy year syndrome is about to happen. Hey, Jim. Hey, this sounds great. I'll get back to you. Hey, go ahead. Send the contract. Yeah, we're pretty much good to go. Hey, let me get my owner's approval, but I don't see any issues. Yeah, we're good. Okay, so all of these are warning signs. And a lot of salespeople will hear this and they, oh my gosh, great, another sale. Hey, boss, guess what? Hang on, don't get too excited. So those susceptible to happy year syndrome, I couldn't resist on this guy. We all were talking about used car sales, and it's not fair. There's a lot of really, really good used car sales people out there. Believe they really are. But okay. So most salespeople, they do use happy years. They really do, unless they're really, really top notch. And even some of the top notch ones fall victim to this every once in a while. They tend to have really high energy, and they're really enthusiastic, which describes most salespeople. They talk too much, and they tend to not listen very well during a sales meeting. Now we're starting to get into the meat of who might be susceptible to this. They don't really ask the right questions. Part of this, they don't really know what questions to ask. They're not very good at identifying roadblocks to sales, and that's a big, big deal. So what are some of the dangers of the happy year syndrome? Well, first of all, you can imagine, if they're not closing the deals and the deals are slipping away, then they're wasting time on non-productive prospects, which is taking the time away that they could be spending on finding the good prospects that fit your company. They're wasting the appointments that are set. If they set them, or if they have somebody else set them, if we set them, and that tends to, anyways, it's just a waste of their time. And if you're paying for appointments, obviously, as a company owner, you are wasting your money. That doesn't sit very well. It ends up there's being slow or no growth because the sales just aren't there. There's a big waste of labor dollars. A lot of places will pay, to get that salesperson in, the enthusiastic person that sounds like he's just going to kill it. And the sales just don't seem to it sounds like they're happening, but they never really materialize and they never close. So you actually go backwards because you have to pay that person to get them to come work for you. So again, sales, they might remain flat, or we don't want them to go down, but they could go down. So not a good thing to happen. So let's identify some of those wishy-washy terms, and then we'll talk about how to combat these things. So again, hey Brad, this sounds great. I think we're ready to go. I like what you said today. It makes sense. Hey, we'll probably move forward next week. Hey, great presentation. Call me in 30 days. We'll see where we're at. So we're going to dissect each one of these three. And by all means, if you've been with me before in my webinars, you know that they're interactive. Don't hesitate to put something in the chat box, and I'll try and watch for any questions or chat, and we'll talk about it. But let's dive in here. So the first one, Brad. Hey, this sounds great. I think we're ready to go. That's pretty weak, and a lot of people would think, a lot of salespeople would think that, hey, well, gosh, it sounds like, hey, we got a live one here. Great. Let's start building up our back office. We got another client coming in. Hang on. Here's what I would say to that. Hey, Brad, help me understand something. What do you mean when you say you think you're ready to go? What's holding you back? So by them using that kind of language where I think we're ready to go, the word think is key here, because that means, well, I think we're ready to go, but I'm not sure is what it really is telling you. So you need to follow up with that, and you cannot let this go. Or if you do, you're going to be wasting a lot of your time, your company's time. Good things generally don't happen when we let this slide by. Okay, so the next one. Hey, Brad, I like what you said today. It really makes a lot of sense. Yeah, we'll probably move forward next week. Again, the typical salesperson is going to be thinking, hey, here we go. Let's go. Hey, we're going out to eat tonight. I got a check coming in here in a couple of weeks. I made a big sale today. Wrong. Hang on a second. We're not even close. What I would say is probably. If you think about it, we'll probably move forward next week. What does that mean? Does that mean that they're going to do it? I mean, they're not going to do it? So I would just say probably. And that person's going to catch them off guard a little bit. And what you'll hear is, yeah, I mean, it looks good and all, but I got to go through and get this approved first. So what he's really telling you is he likes it, likes you, he likes the idea of it. There's a couple more steps to go yet. And you've got to find out what those steps are. So you might be able to help him with those steps, or her. So again, just repeat. There's a bad word that's probably here. I would, in some cases, I would just simply repeat the word and say probably, and let them expand on that. The next one. Hey, great presentation, Brad. Call me in 30 days and we'll see where we're at. Okay, maybe this isn't as strong as is what the other two were, but still a lot of salespeople will hear this and say, oh, we got them in the bag. That's that big whale customer. I've been working on this account for 6 months now. Okay, well, hang on a second. Hey, Bob, what do you mean when you say we'll see where we're at? I mean, what needs to happen before you're ready to move forward? And again, you've got to dive in and find out what do they mean by that. And again, most salespeople will hear what they want to hear, hence the happy ears. But the wishy-washy terms are the whole key to avoiding the happy ears. So, and again, if you have any questions, throw them in the chat box. I don't see any at the moment, but don't hesitate to throw something in there. Okay, so I don't see anything, so we'll keep on moving. Okay. So, holding your prospects accountable. Here's some things that we really have to understand. You are the expert that brings value. They may not know that yet, but don't sell yourself short. if you own a managed service company, if you're a top-notch salesperson for a managed service company, or you're on the line and you're not with managed services at all, but you're in sales, you've got to take the attitude. You've done a lot of training. You bring a lot of value to the table. You've got to have that attitude. Your time is valuable, just as valuable as your prospect. And a lot of salespeople fall in the trap of trying to convince, Mr. Customer to listen to them. We'll do anything you want, just listen to us. That's just not a good attitude to have. Your time is just as valuable as theirs. And you have to understand that, again, a lot of salespeople, I'm being very blunt here today, and it's for your own good. I hear it too often. I'm tired of hearing it. We're going to attack this thing right on today. Part of your real job, if you're going into the sales, whether you're the business owner of the managed services company or you've got your salesperson, whoever that is, the job is not to convince somebody to come aboard, because be careful what you ask for. You might convince the wrong prospect and then you pay for it later. We've had some webinars a couple back. We talked about getting the wrong customers in. Your job is really to see if there's a good fit. You need to rule prospects out that aren't going to fit. They're going to waste your time. Just get rid of them now. So those are some of the things you have to take that attitude. Your prospect really needs to kind of convince you that they're going to be a good fit for you. So don't forget that. So I would say something like this. So John, I understand that maybe today's just not a good time. If it's okay, I'd like to call you back in 6 months, 12 months, you tell me. But John, what needs to happen in order for you to be ready to move forward? A lot of salespeople are afraid to ask that type of a question. You cannot be afraid to ask that question. And here's what's going to happen. Is John just said, look, Brad, I like what you said. You're right. You caught me. I'm really not ready to go right now. I've got so much on my plate right now. And to be honest, I lost 3 key people that I can't afford to do this program right now until I get those people replaced and brought up to speed. That's probably going to take me a good 6 to 7 months before I can even fathom this. Or if you're a managed service provider, you might hear him say something like, you know what, I just signed a contract 3 months ago for a year. Yeah, I like what you're saying, but I can't do anything right now. Great. So John's now told you, because you asked, his real reason of why he can't move forward. And what needs to happen is John may tell you that in order since I just signed my contract with that other provider, in order for me to switch, they're going to have to really kind of mess up. I got to be honest. I just brought them on board. I want to give them a chance. So at least you know. So when you call back in 6 months or 12 months or whatever you agree to get back with them on, you've got something to ask them about. Hey, John, remember me, Brad? I stopped back, 6 months ago. Oh, yeah, Brad, I remember you. Hey, part of our conversation was that you wanted me to check back and see how the other provider was coming. And you mentioned that you had a real issue with your backup and you were having some problems with that. Hey, I was just calling to see, has that been corrected? Do you feel comfortable with everything, or is that still a problem with you? And John's either going to say, yeah, they got it fixed, everything's going great. Okay, great, they're probably not going to be a customer. Or they may say, you know what, I'm glad you brought that up, because they haven't addressed that to our satisfaction whatsoever. Maybe it is time we chat. Okay, that's how you get back in the door. And if that conversation happens, you have an extremely high probability that prospect is now going to become a client, as long as you give them what they want. And you know what they want because you asked. So again, any questions so far? Okay, not yet. Quiet crowd tonight. Well, don't be afraid to ask. So if you don't have a question, I'm going to ask one for you. And I've got a little poll. What I'd like everybody to do, if you could, take 2 seconds. I'm going to send this out here real quick. And who is it that you really prefer to meet with? So if you could, just take a couple seconds. We'll give everybody a couple minutes. And okay, we're collecting, and I should be showing up on your screen here. And I'm assuming most of the people on here are in the managed services industry, but I know there's a few that aren't. So if you're not, that's okay. It doesn't matter. The principles apply. I don't care what industry you're in. It doesn't really matter. So right now, it looks like we have 60% CEO owner, 40% operations manager. Nobody seems to want to talk to director of sales. How about that? And what we do, this seems to make a lot of sense. Okay, I appreciate. Oops, we might have a question here. Okay, Okay, thanks, Perrin. He prefers chief financial officers. Okay, that's fine. Great. Thanks, Perrin. And Perrin, welcome aboard, by the way. Perrin and I hooked up on LinkedIn, if I remember right, not too long ago. So glad to have you aboard. So let's talk about this now. And we're going to talk about decision makers. So why is it important to meet with them? And most of you picked the CEO or the business owner. That was kind of the 60% response. So obviously it's important because you want to make sure that who you're talking to has the ability to decide whether or not they want to do business with you or not. And I know when we set appointments for our clients, this is pretty important to, I don't know anybody yet that said, I don't want to meet with the person who makes a decision. Okay, it's kind of a no-brainer. Okay, but who do you like to meet with? We just talked about that. But here's the thing. I'm going to throw something that maybe you haven't thought of before. For the first appointment, fine. Okay, we can meet with a decision maker. Great. But it is important that we identify all the decision makers. And those decision makers may not always be who you think. And what I mean by that is when you get to that first appointment, and I know you'd just love to just dive right in and tell them how good you are, so be careful of that. We know we talked about this before. Everybody first time on the webinars, I'm not a big fan of that. You got to build that trust and everything first. But one of the things that you want to make sure that you get out of that first meeting right up front is who all the decision makers are. So I would say something like this. Hey, Brad, besides you, who will be involved in making the decision to move forward? And you're going to find out that they may say, hey, I own the business. It's my decision totally. Okay, great. You have no more work to do. Off and running. Good job. But a lot of times you're going to hear that even though they're the CEO, they're the owner, they're the president, whatever their title is, they're the one that ultimately you think they're the one who's going to sign the check and all that, the founder of the company. But what you may find is that they actually are not the only decision maker. And this reminds me of a story when I met with an MSP in Indianapolis. And I thought that as the business owner, this person was going to be the sole decision maker. It's his business, right? Done a good job. When I got there, I asked this question, and boy, did I get surprised. He actually told me there's two others that are actually the actual decision makers. They together make the decision. They make the recommendation to him. And as he put it, I've never vetoed them. So here I am meeting with who I thought the actual decision maker, but if I had not asked that question, because what ended up happening is he really liked what I had to say, but I didn't have the other two in the room, and I never could get the other two on board. So they did not become a customer. So it is important to understand who everybody is involved in that decision-making process, who they are, and make sure that they're there. I'm going to follow up with this, make sure we don't have any questions. I don't think we do. Okay, we're good. Okay, good. I put this on decision makers and when to leave. And what I mean by that is this. In the initial meeting, like I said, you're probably not going to know if there's other decision makers there, but until you ask. But that initial meeting, hey, we're going to set up our appointments up for our clients. Those of you who are clients, you know what I'm talking about. We're going to do our very best to make sure that you get into who we believe is the decision maker. Okay, so the initial meeting, part of that is you want to find out and uncover if there are any other people involved with the decision-making process. So it may not be the people you think. It could be somebody who is the director of sales, might be the director of operations. It could be somebody, the office manager might be involved with the decision. A lot of times the CEO is not the actual decision maker. It's a culmination of 2 or 3 other people. You've got to ferret that out when you go into these meetings, or we're going to have happy years. We want to get away from that. Here's how you do it. In the next meeting, what do you set? And by no means should you ever leave unless you just rule them out and you don't want to meet with them again. Okay, that's the caveat here. But provided that you feel there's a good match, they feel there's a good match, and you both agree that we should move forward, don't you dare ever leave without setting that second appointment. But here's the thing. Once you find those other decision makers, make sure that those decision makers, all of them, are going to be involved in that next meeting. And that is really, really important. And before I move on, I'm going to follow up with why that's important, because what's going to happen, let's say you have, this has happened to me many, many times, that, well, I'll tell you a story here about a gentleman last night that I just talked to. He was describing to me, he's in the merger and acquisitions business, so nothing to do with computers, I guess, but the principle's the same. He was telling me that he had a big client that he thought was ready to go. The client and his wife were the sole decision makers. And they had spent, I believe this is his 5th or 6th meeting with this gentleman. And the gentleman even told them that his wife will be part of the decision process. They never, ever asked for her to be present. They spent a lot of time, especially since this company, they don't charge a fee up front. They only make money if they close business for their clients. So you can imagine 5 or 6 meetings with 2, 3, 4 people from their company all investing their time. They never had the gentleman's wife, who is a big part. She's a 50-50. She makes half that decision, but they just assumed it was all him. And long story short is they worked on this case for a year. And then finally it just fizzled out. And when he mentioned that to me, I said, well, that's because you never asked the wife to be present. She's just from what you're telling me, she's just a big part of that decision as the person that you were trying to talk to this whole time. So hard lesson to learn. But if they are not willing to involve the decision makers in that second meeting, you've got a choice. You go one or two ways. You can continue the meeting. So for example, if you're setting the meeting and they're not going to get the decision makers involved, you're probably going to be wasting time. I don't know that I'd even take that appointment. If you're serious, you guys all need to be here. And if Bob's the one that you've talked with, Bob, I get it. You want to be the one that's kind of spearheading this, but you said that John is also part of this decision-making process. What happens when you go back and try and tell John everything we talked about, and then John has a bunch of questions? How are you going to answer his questions when we haven't even talked about it? That's usually how I approach that and try and fizzle that out. It works most of the time. Not all the time, but it works most of the time. And then they'll try and get, John on the meeting. Usually that's what happens. If you're already there at your second meeting, you schedule it for Bob and John both to be there. And then what happens is Bob's there, but John makes a call, say, hey, I'm sorry, I got tied up. I'm going to be like 3 hours. I can't make it. So you can continue that meeting. I would not advise that you do, because what's going to end up happening is you're going to have to rely on Bob to sell John on everything you talked about. That doesn't work very well. You're also going to you're going to end up having another meeting anyhow. You're wasting your time. So I think I would take the other choice. I would cancel the meeting right there on the spot, or reschedule. And a lot of times what you can also do is It depends on the situation, but if Bob's there, John's the one that can't seem to make it in person, you can ask Bob, hey Bob, how about we do this? Can we get John on the phone? At least he can listen in and contribute that way. I got another 15 minutes before I have to leave. Why don't we try and get him on the phone? And usually what happens is Bob will try and get John at least on the phone. If it happens, great, then you can continue your meeting. But if that's not going to happen and Bob just can't or John just can't make that meeting, then cancel it, reschedule. I don't care if you've driven an hour or even two. Doesn't matter, because you're going to be wasting your time, and it's actually sets you up for failure, because now Bob is going to try and sell, and he may do a horrible job. He's going to sell your service to John, and John's not going to get his questions asked and answered. So move on. That would be a big thing that you got to get over that. Just do it. You can thank me later. Okay. Any other questions at the moment? Okay. We're doing good. So what happens when you need help? So first of all, it all starts with making sure you hire the right people. Knowing what you know about the happy years syndrome, and this is one of the things that separates the typical salesperson who's enthusiastic, energetic, smiles a lot, hey, just tells jokes, great to get along with. You like the guy or the lady. Ask them if they've ever lost a sale, and ask them to explain what happened or why they feel they lost it, and pay attention to their response. And listen for, now that you're aware of it, listen for those keys. Are they somebody who is going to tell me they've landed this client and then a month later it fizzles out? Or are they going to be that type of person that is going to give you the answer, I lost the sale, but the reason I lost it was they had something happen in their company which prevented them doing it. But here's our action plan going forward. I was supposed to call them back and, a year later. Now I came with your company, so obviously that's not going to happen. But yeah, that's how I lost. I didn't necessarily anything I did, but this is what happened in their situation. There's a big difference there. So pay attention to that. The other part is make sure you get enough appointments. If you're struggling to get enough appointments for your company, then what ends up happening is whether it's you going out in the appointments or for your salespeople, they're putting a lot of pressure on themselves to make every appointment a sale. That's dangerous. You've got to have enough pipeline with prospects that you can afford to tell somebody, you know what, if John can't be here, let's reschedule. It gives you a confidence that you don't have when you only have 2 or 3 people in your pipeline. You can move on. It's not a big deal. The company's not going to get hurt. The salesperson's not going to get hurt. What ends up happening is you don't waste time, which gives you more time to go after the clients that do fit and are receptive to what you have to offer. So that is a big, big deal. So if you don't have enough appointments, figure out a way to get enough. If you need help with it, call me. That's what we do. We get appointments for people. If you feel that you got a good person, that maybe you figured out that they do suffer from happy years, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to fire them, but they may need some sales coaching. And I'd like to introduce you to my sales coach. And those of you who are clients, this is Dan Hudak. Dan's from Sandler Sales Training. I'm a big fan of Dan's, because I'm going to finish my story that I started out with today, that person about the happy years, thinking he set the company record on fire, and then he just had to do the walk of shame thing. That person's actually me. And then I met Dan Hudak a few years back, and Dan has coached me along and helped me to understand, and he even used the phrase happy years on me. So there you go. I bared my soul to everybody who wants to hear it today, but that's a true story. Dan has turned me around, and we use Dan to work with our clients. Listen to them. I know a lot of people, when we set appointments to get with Dan, some people say, well, we're already great at sales. Well, hang on a second. Everybody can learn something. And this guy's very, very in tune to how appointments work, especially the appointments we set. Whether you use Dan, I don't care. Hook up with a sales coach that can help you and your staff. It's going to be expensive, but it's expensive when you have to hire somebody and they can't sell something. That's more expensive. So wrapping up, hold your prospects accountable. Listen for those wishy-washy words that they use. Work with your sales team to get better. And by all means, make sure that you have a large enough pipeline with good prospects so you have activity. And that way, you can have that abundance attitude where if one of them doesn't come aboard, life doesn't end. It really doesn't. You just move on. So I hope that you got something out of today. If you wouldn't mind, put something in the chat or anything, just some comments. If you got something out, you feel this is valuable, or if there's something that you would like to have seen so I can continually get better in my webinars, make sure you put them in the chat box. I always welcome that. Call me if you want to talk about building up appointments so you can have that attitude. That's what we do. You can either, my phone's on here, it's just give me a call or send me an email. Either way, doesn't matter. Just get a hold of me and we'll have that conversation to see if we're a good fit or not. And we'll go from there. So, looks like we have a question. Hang on a second. Okay, great, Amir. Thank you. Great stuff, Brad. Thank you. Wonderful. So that's all we have for today. Again, I want to thank everybody for showing up. If by chance any of you are going to the Channel Partners event in Las Vegas, that's April, I believe it's the 9th, 10th, 11th, might be the 12th. If you're going there, reach out to me. I feel very fortunate and honored. I've been asked to speak, and I'm going to be speaking on the subject of how do you battle an incumbent and how do you get rid of them. It's tough. So I'm going to be speaking live in Las Vegas. So if anybody's gone, I'd love to catch up. Maybe we have dinner, have a cup of coffee, something like that. Let me know, and we'll go from there. So thanks everybody again. Have a wonderful week, and let's go sell something.